I never expected to be the kind of person who would sit in his office at 2 in the morning, swirling a glass of bourbon, staring into the wreckage of what was supposed to be my sister's perfect wedding. But here I was, watching the messages flood in, hearing the desperate voicemails piling up, and knowing that every single call was about the disaster that had unfolded earlier that evening. I paid for it all. The venue, the flowers, the catering, the luxurious designer dress. I even bought my sister Vanessa a beautiful apartment as a wedding gift. And how did she repay me? By casually telling me, the night before the wedding, that my wife and kids were not invited because they didn't fit her luxury theme. I should have seen it coming. No, I did see it coming. There was always a part of me that knew Vanessa was selfish, vain, and obsessed with appearances. But some naive, hopeful side of me had held on to the idea that, deep down, she still respected me as her brother. That idea was shattered completely when she leaned across the table at an exclusive rooftop restaurant, sipping on her overpriced wine, and delivered the news as if she were commenting on the weather. "Oh, by the way," she said, barely looking up from her phone, "I need you to come alone tomorrow. Emily and the kids, well, they don't really fit the aesthetic." For a moment, I thought I had misheard her. "What?" I asked, my grip tightening around the glass in my hand. She sighed as if she were talking to a fool. "James, come on. You know what I mean. This wedding is going to be elegant, high class. We have professional photographers, VIP guests, everything has to be perfect. And Emily, she's sweet, but she's a little rustic." Rustic. That was the word she used. As if my wife was some outdated piece of farm equipment, instead of the woman who had stood by my side through every struggle, through every high and low. As if my children, my own kids, were some sort of embarrassment to her dream wedding. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "So let me get this straight," I said slowly, making sure I had heard correctly. "You don't want my wife and children at your wedding because they aren't fancy enough for you?" Vanessa smiled, as if I had finally caught on. "Exactly. It's just for the optics, James. You understand, right?" I leaned back in my chair, exhaling slowly, my fingers curling into fists under the table. And then she had the audacity to add, "But of course, you're still covering everything, right?" She laughed, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. "You're the big brother," she said. "That's what you do." I stared at her for a long moment, something inside me twisting and breaking all at once. And then I smiled. "You're right," I nodded. "That's exactly what I do." I picked up my drink, finished it in one smooth gulp, and stood up. I leaned down slightly, looking her dead in the eyes. "You'll get everything you deserve tomorrow, Vanessa," I said softly. And then I walked out of that restaurant without another word. But the moment I stepped into my car, I pulled out my phone. "Hey," I said when the call connected. "Change of plans for the wedding. Get everything ready. We're going to make this a day she'll never forget." Looking back, I should have known. The signs had always been there. Vanessa never respected Emily, not from the very first time I brought her home for a family dinner. Emily, ever the thoughtful one, had wanted to make a good first impression. She spent hours perfecting a homemade apple pie, making sure it was just right. She was excited, hopeful, eager to be accepted. We walked into my parents' house, the scent of roasted meat and expensive wine filling the air. My mother greeted us, my father gave his usual nod from his spot at the bar, and then Vanessa waltzed in, wearing some overpriced designer dress, her eyes scanning Emily from head to toe like she was a specimen under a microscope. "Oh," she said, forcing a tight-lipped smile. "You baked something. That's cute." Emily smiled anyway, holding out the pie. "I thought it would be nice to bring something homemade." Vanessa barely touched it. In fact, later that night, I found it, completely untouched in the trash. That was just the beginning. Over the years, she conveniently forgot to invite Emily to family gatherings. She made backhanded comments about her simple fashion sense, rolling her eyes at Emily's preference for practical shoes instead of designer heels. Once, I even overheard her introducing Emily to her friends as James's little country project. I let it slide. For years, I let it slide. But this, telling me my wife and children weren't good enough for her wedding, that was the final straw. Now, sitting in my office with my phone vibrating nonstop, I watched as Vanessa's perfect world crumbled around her. Her wedding had turned into the single biggest disaster our family had ever seen, and I had made sure of it. I let her walk down the aisle, glowing in her designer dress, soaking up the admiration of the high society guests she had handpicked. And then, right when she reached the altar, a beautifully wrapped special delivery arrived. She thought it was another extravagant gift from me. She thought wrong. When the box was opened, 6 live chickens flapped their way out, sending feathers flying through the air, knocking over expensive decorations, and turning her perfect ceremony into utter chaos. And then the real surprise started. The ballroom's massive LED screen flickered to life, playing a carefully curated video, Vanessa's own words, recorded over the years. Clip 1. Emily is sweet, but let's be honest, she's just a farm girl who got lucky. Clip 2. James is so easy to manipulate. He just throws money at me because he feels guilty for being successful. Clip 3. Honestly, I don't even like kids. I don't want my wedding to look like a daycare. Clip 4. James is ridiculous. He'll pay for anything. Watch me take full advantage of it. Silence. Guests stared at the screen in shock. Vanessa stood frozen, her face drained of all color. Her fiancé turned to look at her as if seeing her for the first time. His parents whispered among themselves, pure disgust on their faces. And then, just like that, he walked away, left her standing there in her dream wedding, alone. I stood up, adjusting my cufflinks. Vanessa, I said into the mic, I'm so sorry you had to hear that. I mean, really, who could have recorded those? Terrible timing, huh? Her voice broke. You set me up. I shrugged. Set you up? Vanessa, I just played back your own words. She lunged for the mic. I stepped back. Oh, and one more thing, I added smoothly. That apartment I bought you as a wedding gift? Yeah, that's no longer yours. A legal representative handed her an official document. I had just transferred her luxury apartment to a nonprofit that provides housing for struggling farm families. Seemed more fitting. And just like that, Vanessa's perfect wedding was over, and I walked out, finally free. Looking back, I should have known this was inevitable. The signs had always been there, subtle but undeniable, like cracks forming in a foundation that would one day crumble. Vanessa had never respected Emily, not from the very first time I brought her home, not from the moment we stood side by side as husband and wife, and certainly not when we built a family together. But I ignored it. For years, I told myself it didn't matter, that family was family, and that as long as Vanessa and I kept the peace, things would be fine. I was wrong. It started with the little things. The first time I brought Emily to a family dinner, she had been excited. Nervous, yes, but eager to make a good impression. She spent hours in the kitchen, carefully perfecting a homemade apple pie, rolling out the dough, slicing the apples just right, making sure the filling was the perfect balance of sweet and tart. She wanted them to like her. We walked into my parents' house that evening, the air rich with the scent of roasted meat, expensive wine, and laughter. My mom greeted us with a polite but distant smile. My father barely looked up from his usual spot at the bar. And then there was Vanessa, sweeping into the room in one of her overpriced designer dresses, her eyes flickering over Emily as if she were inspecting a piece of furniture at an auction. Oh, she said, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. You baked something. That's cute. Emily, ever gracious, still smiled as she held out the pie. I thought it would be nice to bring something homemade. Vanessa barely touched it. Later that night, as I was helping my mom clean up, I found the pie untouched in the trash. I remember standing there for a long moment, staring at it, something in my chest tightening, but I let it go. It was just one thing, one small insult. It wouldn't be the last. For years, Vanessa made a habit of conveniently forgetting to invite Emily to family gatherings. When confronted, she would act surprised. Oh, didn't I tell you? It must have slipped my mind. When Emily would dress up for events, Vanessa would always find a way to slip in a comment. That's a unique dress. Oh, you did your own hair? That's brave. She never outright insulted Emily. Not directly, anyway. She was too smart for that. But the backhanded comments, the dismissive attitude, the way she introduced Emily to her friends as James's little country project, it all added up. I told myself it didn't matter. I told myself Emily didn't care. But I was wrong about that too. The night before Vanessa's wedding, as I sat across from her in a dimly lit rooftop restaurant, I realized just how wrong I had been. She took a sip of her overpriced wine, scrolled through her phone, then glanced up as if remembering something unimportant. "Oh, by the way," she said casually, "I need you to come alone tomorrow. Emily and the kids, well, they don't really fit the aesthetic." I stared at her, sure I had misheard. "What?" She sighed like I was exhausting her. "James, come on. You know what I mean. This wedding is going to be a luxury event. High-class guests, professional photographers, a carefully curated atmosphere. Everything has to look perfect. And Emily, well, she's a little rustic. Rustic. Like my wife was a piece of outdated farm equipment. Like my children, my own kids, were an embarrassment." I felt my jaw clench, my fingers curling into fists under the table. But Vanessa just kept scrolling, completely unfazed. "Let me get this straight," I said slowly, my voice steady. "You don't want my wife and kids at your wedding because they aren't fancy enough for you?" She smiled. "Exactly. It's just for the optics, James. You understand, right?" The worst part was that she truly believed I would go along with it, that I would nod, accept it, and continue writing checks like nothing had happened. I exhaled slowly. "And let me guess, I'm still paying for everything?" She laughed. "Of course. You're the big brother. That's what you do." I stared at her for a long moment, something inside me twisting, breaking, and reshaping itself all at once. And then I smiled. "You're right," I said, nodding. "That's exactly what I do." I picked up my drink, finished it in one smooth gulp, and stood up. I leaned down slightly, looking her dead in the eyes. "You'll get everything you deserve tomorrow, Vanessa," I said softly. And then I walked out of that restaurant. The next day, as I arrived at the wedding alone, I watched Vanessa basking in her moment of perfection. The venue was breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, floral arches straight out of a magazine. The guests were meticulously selected, each one dressed to impress, sipping champagne as if they were attending an exclusive gala. Every detail had been planned to ensure that Vanessa's wedding would be nothing short of flawless. But perfection, as she was about to learn, is fragile. As Vanessa walked down the aisle, glowing in her designer gown, the first special delivery arrived. A massive, elegantly wrapped gift box, wheeled in by a staff member and placed at the center of the ballroom. Tiffany blue, gold ribbon, the picture of elegance. Vanessa paused, beaming. She thought it was another extravagant gift from me. She thought wrong. She motioned for one of her bridesmaids to pull the ribbon. The box popped open, and out came 6 live chickens. Yes, chickens. They shot out like fireworks, wings flapping, feathers floating through the air. One landed on the wedding cake, another jumped onto Vanessa's dress, a third took off straight toward the guests, knocking over a very expensive champagne tower. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Screams, people scrambling from their chairs, glass shattering, a guest tripping over a tablecloth, sending an entire tray of hors d'oeuvres crashing to the floor. And Vanessa? She stood there, frozen, horror painted across her face. But that was just the warm-up act. The ballroom's massive LED screen flickered to life, and then, in perfect HD clarity, a video started playing. Vanessa's own words. Every insult, every backhanded comment, every time she had belittled Emily, our kids, and me. Clip 1. Emily is sweet, but she's just a farm girl who got lucky. Clip 2. James is so easy to manipulate, he throws money at me because he feels guilty. Clip 3. Honestly, I don't even like kids. I don't want my wedding to look like a daycare. Silence. The guests stared in shock. Her fiancé turned to look at her like she was a stranger. His parents exchanged disgusted looks. And then he walked away. Just like that, Vanessa's perfect wedding was over. And I walked out, finally free. I arrived at the wedding alone, just as Vanessa had requested. The venue was nothing short of breathtaking. Crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling, polished marble floors reflecting the golden light, and an extravagant floral arch framing the altar like something out of a royal wedding. I should know. I paid for it. The guests were exactly the kind Vanessa wanted. High society elites, influencers, business moguls. Every one of them handpicked to fit the image of exclusivity she was desperate to project. Champagne glasses clinked softly as people murmured about the elegance of it all, their designer-clad bodies perfectly in sync with the curated atmosphere. Everything was going smoothly. Too smoothly. I adjusted my suit, keeping my expression calm as I took my seat near the front. Vanessa stood at the far end of the room, radiant in her custom-made designer gown, soaking in the admiration from the crowd. This was her moment, the day she had planned for over a year, the event she believed would solidify her place among the social elite. She had no idea what was coming. The music started. The guests turned toward the grand double doors as Vanessa began her walk down the aisle. And that's when the first special delivery arrived. A hush fell over the room as a staff member wheeled in a massive, beautifully wrapped gift box, placing it directly in the center of the ballroom. It was the picture of elegance, Tiffany blue, gold ribbon, standing tall like a decorative masterpiece. Vanessa hesitated mid-step, her eyes lighting up with delight. She thought it was another grand gesture from me, one final, extravagant gift from the older brother she had always manipulated. She was wrong. The priest paused. The guests whispered among themselves. Vanessa tilted her head sweetly, her voice soft yet commanding. "James, what is this?" I stood up slowly, adjusting my cufflinks. "Just a little something special for you, sis," I said smoothly. "Go ahead. Open it." She let out a delighted laugh, motioning for one of her bridesmaids to pull the ribbon. The moment the box popped open, chaos erupted. 6 live chickens shot out like fireworks, flapping their wings, squawking at full volume. Feathers filled the air, drifting like confetti in the midst of a nightmare. One chicken landed directly on the wedding cake, sinking into the pristine layers of buttercream. Another launched itself onto Vanessa's lace train, its claws snagging the delicate fabric as it flapped wildly. A third took off straight into the crowd, sending a very expensive champagne tower crashing to the floor. Screams filled the ballroom. Guests scrambled from their chairs, their designer heels and tailored suits suddenly useless against the pandemonium of poultry. A waiter tripped over a tablecloth, sending an entire tray of horse doves crashing to the ground. And Vanessa? She stood there, paralyzed, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Her hands trembled as she tried to shake the chicken off her dress, her face rapidly turning red with humiliation. "What is happening?" she shrieked. I remained perfectly calm, watching as my meticulously planned chaos unfolded. But that was just the warm-up act. The ballroom lights suddenly dimmed. The guests turned toward the massive LED screen mounted at the front of the room. And then, in perfect HD clarity, a video started playing. Vanessa's voice filled the air. Every cruel, condescending, heartless thing she had ever said about me, my wife, and my kids, recorded, compiled, and displayed in front of every guest, every friend, and most importantly, her fiancé's family. Clip 1. Emily is sweet, but let's be honest, she's just a farm girl who got lucky. She wouldn't know real class if it stared her in the face. Clip 2. James is so easy to manipulate. He just throws money at me because he feels guilty for being successful. Clip 3. Honestly, I don't even like kids. I don't want my wedding to look like a daycare. A stunned silence fell over the room. The air was thick, heavy, unbearable. I turned slightly, just enough to catch Vanessa's reaction. She was frozen, her face completely drained of color, her hands clenched into fists at her sides, her entire body trembling. And then, I saw it. Her fiancé Jackson was staring at her in absolute disbelief. His parents exchanged horrified glances. The whispers began. A guest near the back murmured, "Did she really say that?" Another muttered, "I wouldn't want my son marrying someone like that." Jackson took a slow step back. "Vanessa, is this real?" She spun toward me, rage boiling over. "You set me up." I shrugged, my voice cool. "Set you up, Vanessa? I just played back your own words. You did this to yourself." She lunged forward, furious, but before she could reach me, Jackson took another step away. He turned toward his mother. "We're leaving." His mother nodded stiffly. "Yes, I believe that's best." Vanessa whipped around, panic finally sinking in. "Jackson, no, please, it's not what it looks like." But he was already walking away. And just like that, her wedding was over. But I wasn't finished yet. I picked up a microphone, adjusting my suit like I was about to give a business presentation. "My apologies for the interruption, everyone," I said smoothly. "But I have one last announcement before we wrap things up." Vanessa's eyes darted toward me, desperate, pleading, afraid. I smiled. "You know that luxury apartment I bought Vanessa as a wedding gift?" The guests leaned in, hanging on my every word. "Yeah, that's no longer hers." A hush fell over the crowd. A legal representative stepped forward, handing Vanessa official documents. I just transferred the deed to a nonprofit that provides housing for struggling farm families, I continued. Seemed more fitting, don't you think? Vanessa let out a strangled gasp. Her ex-fiancé's mother shook her head in disgust. And just like that, Vanessa Carter lost everything. Her wedding, her fiancé, her status, her pride. Security escorted her out as guests whispered, some recording the entire spectacle. And me, I walked out, perfectly composed, finally free. I ignored every call and message from Vanessa after the wedding. I thought I was done. I really did. My wife and I took our kids on a weekend getaway to the countryside. Fresh air, good food, and most importantly, zero drama. For the first time in years, I felt at peace, away from the suffocating weight of family expectations. But by the time we got back, my phone was flooded with hundreds of missed calls, texts, and voicemails. From Vanessa, my parents, and even some of her former in-laws. Apparently the whole thing had blown up online. And Vanessa? Oh, she wasn't taking it well. The internet never forgets. Some of the wedding guests had recorded everything, the chickens, the video, her fiancé walking out, and uploaded it to social media. Within hours, the clips had gone viral. Headlines popped up across platforms. Luxury wedding turns into absolute chaos. Bride humiliated in front of hundreds. What happened at the wedding that will go down in history? Vanessa Carter's dream wedding becomes a nightmare. And of course, the comments poured in. She really thought she could insult her brother's family and get away with it? Karma hit fast. Not gonna lie, the chickens were a genius move. James is the MVP for donating the apartment to actual hard-working people. Imagine losing your husband and your house in the same night. Brutal. Vanessa's perfect image? Completely shattered. She had spent years curating her flawless high society persona, posting pictures of expensive brunches, designer clothes, exclusive parties. But now, people were dragging her through the mud. And worst of all, her ex-fiancé's family had completely cut her off. Vanessa's downfall. I finally gave in and answered one of her calls. The second I picked up, she was hysterical. "James, fix this," she wailed. "You have to tell people it was all a joke. Say it was fake. Do something," I sighed. "Vanessa, I didn't post the videos. Your guests did. Maybe you should have treated people better." "I did nothing wrong," she screamed. "You ruined my life." I rubbed my temples. "No, Vanessa," I said calmly. "You did that yourself when you told me my wife and kids weren't good enough for you." She let out a frustrated scream. "You don't get it. My life is over. Jackson's family won't speak to me. My friends won't be seen with me. She cut herself off. I frowned. "You're what?" Silence. Then quietly she muttered, "I got fired, James." I blinked. What? Turns out her company didn't like the bad press. Some of her clients saw the videos and decided they didn't want to be associated with someone who openly insulted working-class families. So her boss, who had always been so proud of her classy demeanor, decided to let her go. She was completely on her own. No job, no fiancé, no apartment, no family willing to help. Vanessa Carter had officially hit rock bottom. Mom and Dad get involved. Not even 20 minutes after hanging up with Vanessa, my parents called. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I already knew what they wanted. I answered with a simple, "What?" "James," my mom sighed, "you've made your point. Don't you think it's time to let this go?" I actually laughed. Let it go? You mean like how Vanessa let my wife and kids get completely disrespected? "She's your sister?" Dad chimed in, using his classic fatherly authority tone. "You need to help her. She has nothing now." I stared at the ceiling. "That's not my problem," Mom snapped. "James, she's family." "Oh, now you care about family?" I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Silence, I sighed. "All right, fine, I'll help." Mom sounded relieved. "I knew you'd do the right thing, sweetheart. Thank you." I smirked. "Yeah, I'll help. The way Vanessa helped Emily when she needed support. I'll help the way Vanessa included my kids in her wedding. I'll help the way she respected my hard work all these years." Silence. That's what I thought. I hung up. Where is she now? It's been 6 months since the wedding disaster. Vanessa tried to make a comeback, rebranding herself online, pretending to be some humble, changed woman after her tragic fall from grace. No one bought it. She's currently living in a small rental apartment, working a job that pays a fraction of what she used to make. Her fancy social circle? Gone. Her high-end lifestyle? Over. And me? My life has never been better. A life without Vanessa. My business exploded after the wedding drama went viral. More people started coming to my restaurants. Turns out, people love supporting a guy who stands up for his family. We expanded to 5 new locations, including one in the heart of the city. It was my dream to open a flagship restaurant, and last night was our grand opening. My wife, she's thriving. She started a small organic food business, working directly with local farmers, including her parents. My kids, happier than ever, no more being treated like less than by their own family. And Vanessa? Well, she didn't exactly land on her feet. She bounced between a few low-paying jobs, but every time a new employer found out about the wedding scandal, she got let go. No one wanted to be associated with her. Her old friends abandoned her. Her reputation? Gone. Her lifestyle? Over. And last night, she walked into my restaurant, looking like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. Vanessa's desperate plea. I was standing at the front, greeting guests when I saw her. She wasn't wearing designer anymore. No more diamonds, no perfect hair, just plain jeans, a simple coat, and tired eyes. She hesitated at the entrance, then slowly walked up to me. James? Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I crossed my arms. Vanessa? She looked around at the restaurant, the packed tables, the elegant decor, the buzzing energy. For the first time in her life, I think she actually saw it. Can we talk? She asked. I studied her face. A year ago, I would have laughed in her face, but now, I just felt indifferent. Fine, I said, leading her to a quieter corner. I had no idea what she was about to ask me, but I already knew my answer. It's been a year since Vanessa's wedding, the one that turned into a complete disaster. I thought that was the last I'd hear from her. But life has a funny way of bringing things full circle, because last night, she showed up at my restaurant, and she looked nothing like the Vanessa I used to know. A year of karma. A lot has changed since the wedding. My business exploded after the drama went viral. More people started coming to my restaurants. Turns out, people love supporting a guy who stands up for his family. We expanded to 5 new locations, including one in the heart of the city. My wife? Thriving. She started a small organic food business, working directly with local farmers, including her parents. My kids? Happier than ever. No more being treated like less than by their own family. And Vanessa? Well, she didn't exactly land on her feet. She bounced between a few low-paying jobs, but every time a new employer found out about the wedding scandal, she got let go. No one wanted to be associated with her. Her old friends abandoned her. Her reputation? Gone. Her lifestyle? Over. And last night, she walked into my restaurant, looking like she had the weight of the world on her shoulders. Vanessa's desperate plea. I was standing at the front, greeting guests, when I saw her. She wasn't wearing designer anymore. No more diamonds, no perfectly styled hair, just plain jeans, a simple coat, and tired eyes. She hesitated at the entrance, then slowly walked up to me. James? Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I crossed my arms. Vanessa. She looked around at the restaurant, the packed tables, the elegant decor, the buzzing energy. For the first time in her life, I think she actually saw it. Can we talk? She asked. I studied her face. A year ago, I would have laughed in her face, but now, I just felt indifferent. Fine, I said. Leading her to a quieter corner, she took a deep breath. James, I messed up. I know that now. I said nothing, just waited. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my friends. Jackson won't even speak to me. Mom and Dad, they can't help me. She swallowed hard. I need a fresh start, and I was hoping. She hesitated, then finally said it. I was hoping you could give me a job. I stared at her. Of all the things I expected her to say, that wasn't one of them. A job? I repeated. She nodded quickly. I know I don't deserve it, but I need to start over. And you're the only one left. For a moment I actually considered it, not because I wanted to help her, but because I wanted to see if she had actually changed. So I asked, why should I hire you? She blinked. What? Why should I give you a job? I repeated. What do you bring to the table? She floundered. I can learn. I can do customer service, or maybe marketing. I raised an eyebrow. Marketing? You mean the way you marketed me as a fool who'd pay for anything? She flinched. Or maybe customer service? I continued. You mean treating people with kindness? The way you treated my wife, my kids? Her face turned red. She had no answer. I sighed and leaned forward. Vanessa, let me make this clear. This restaurant, my success, it happened without you. You spent years looking down on me, calling my family rustic, acting like you were better than us. I shook my head. I don't think you've changed. I think you're just desperate. Her lip trembled. Please, James. I don't have anywhere else to go. I took a deep breath. Then I made my decision. Vanessa, I said slowly. The answer is no. Walking away. For the first time in her life, she looked genuinely heartbroken. So that's it? She whispered. That's it. I nodded. She swallowed, looked down at the floor, and for a moment I thought she might actually cry. But then she took a shaky breath and stood up. Okay, she murmured. I understand. And then she turned and walked out. No screaming, no insults, just silence. And you know what? For the first time since this whole mess started, I actually felt peaceful. Vanessa finally learned that actions have consequences, that treating people like dirt will eventually catch up to you. And me? I was finally free. Mom and Dad's regrets. A few weeks after Vanessa's visit, my parents called. I wasn't surprised. They probably wanted to scold me for not helping her. But when I answered, my mom's voice sounded different. James, she said softly, we need to talk. I sighed. What now? There was a pause. Then she said something I never expected. We were wrong. I sat up straight. What? We were wrong, she repeated. About you, about Emily, about everything. I stayed quiet. We spent years favoring Vanessa, making excuses for her, expecting you to carry the weight of this family. And now, we see what we did. I leaned back in my chair. So what do you want from me? I asked. Nothing, she said. We just wanted to tell you that we're sorry. I wasn't expecting that. For a long moment I said nothing. Then I finally sighed. I appreciate it, but it's too late. James, no, I cut her off. I've moved on. I have a good life, a great family, and a successful business. I don't need validation from people who only realize my worth after they lost everything else. Silence. I hope you two figure things out, I said. But I'm done. And then I hung up. I wasn't angry, I wasn't bitter, I just didn't care anymore. Because for the first time in my life, I was truly, completely free.